Some houses hold secrets, some hold memories, but this house held something far worse than either of us could have imagined. What we found inside changed everything we thought we knew about the past, and what followed us home proved that some doors should never be opened. Before we begin, drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. We love hearing from our viewers around the world. And if you enjoy macabre stories like this one, hit that subscribe button so you never miss our next terrifying tale. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming. The autumn rain hammered against the windshield as Marcus Chen guided his pickup truck down the crumbling asphalt of Hickory Lane. Beside him, his younger sister Jamie scrolled through her phone, her face illuminated by the pale blue glow of the screen. The GPS had stopped working 3 miles back, leaving them to navigate by the faded street signs that occasionally emerged from the fog like skeletal fingers pointing the way. "This is it," Marcus said, pulling to a stop in front of a chain-link fence crowned with rust and warning signs. 1247 Hickory Lane. Jamie looked up from her phone, her eyes widening as she took in the sight before them. The house stood 3 stories tall, its Victorian architecture barely visible beneath decades of neglect. Plywood covered every window, each board marked with an official seal dated October 15th, 1974. Yellow police tape, weathered to a sickly beige, still clung to the porch railings, fluttering weakly in the rain-soaked wind. "Mom really grew up here?" Jamie's voice carried a note of disbelief. Marcus nodded, killing the engine, "until she was 12. Then something happened, and the state sealed it up. She never talked about it. And now she's asked us to come here and retrieve her things." Jamie tucked her phone into her jacket pocket. 3 weeks before she dies of cancer, she finally tells us about this place. Doesn't that strike you as weird? Everything about this is weird. Marcus reached into the back seat and grabbed 2 flashlights and a crowbar. But she was very specific. She said there's a box in her old bedroom closet. Red leather, about the size of a shoebox. She needs it before she passes. The siblings stepped out into the rain, their boots squelching in the overgrown grass that had once been a lawn. The fence gate hung open, its padlock long since rusted away. As they approached the porch, Marcus noticed something odd about the seals on the plywood. They weren't just official notices, they were warnings. "Condemned by order of Ashford County," one read. Another proclaimed, "Entry forbidden. Biohazard." But it was the 3rd seal that made Marcus pause, his hand hovering over the crowbar. In faded red letters, someone had stamped, "Quarantine, do not open, biohazard." Jamie said, reading over his shoulder, "What the hell happened here in 1974? Marcus had done his research during the 6-hour drive from Chicago. He'd found surprisingly little. The local newspaper archives showed nothing about 1247 Hickory Lane. No fire, no crime, no disease outbreak. It was as if the house had simply been erased from public record. Even the county clerk's office had been unhelpful, claiming the files were sealed by court order. The only clue had come from an elderly reference librarian who'd worked in Ashford since the 60s. When Marcus mentioned the address, her face had gone pale. "That's the Holloway house," she'd whispered. "We don't talk about the Holloway house." She wouldn't say anything more. Marcus wedged the crowbar between the plywood and the doorframe. The wood groaned, decades of rust and decay making the nails easy to pry loose. The board came free with a sharp crack that echoed across the empty street. Behind it, the front door stood closed, but unlocked. "Last chance to back out," Marcus said, his hand on the doorknob. Jamie pulled her jacket tighter against the rain. "Mum's dying, Marcus. If this is what she needs, then we're going in." The door swung open with a prolonged creak that would have been comical in any other circumstance. The smell hit them immediately, a thick, musty odor of decay and abandonment, mixed with something else, something chemical and wrong. Marcus clicked on his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness to reveal an entrance hall frozen in time. The interior looked as if the occupants had simply vanished mid-activity. A coat rack near the door still held jackets and umbrellas. Mail lay scattered on a side table, letters addressed to the Holloway family, with postmarks from September 1974. A pair of child's shoes sat neatly by the stairs, waiting for feet that would never return. "This is creepy as hell," Jamie whispered, her own flashlight scanning the walls. Faded photographs lined the hallway, showing a smiling family, a father with thick sideburns and glasses, a mother with long brown hair, and 2 children, a boy of about 10 and a girl who couldn't have been more than 7. "That's Mom," Marcus said, pointing to the girl in one photo. Even at 7, Eleanor Chen's distinctive smile was unmistakable. "She never told us she had a brother." They moved deeper into the house, their footsteps muffled by a thick layer of dust that covered everything like grey snow. The living room was a museum of the early 70s, an orange sofa, a console television with fake wood paneling, a rotary phone on an end table. A TV guide lay open on the coffee table, its date clearly visible, October 12th, 1974. 3 days before the house was sealed, Jamie noted. Marcus nodded, his attention drawn to something on the far wall. A calendar hung beside the doorway to the kitchen, still displaying October 1974. Someone had circled October 14th in red marker and written 2 words, "It knows." "Marcus," Jamie's voice was tight with tension. "Look at this." She was standing by the mantelpiece, where a series of family photos were arranged. But these weren't like the ones in the hallway. In each photograph, a dark smudge obscured part of the image, as if someone had tried to erase a person from the picture. Marcus leaned closer. The smudges were roughly human-shaped, always in the same position, standing behind the mother. "That's weird," Marcus said. "Maybe the film was damaged." In every single photo, Jamie picked up one of the frames. Behind the glass, the image showed the Holloway family at what looked like a birthday party. The mother and 2 children were clearly visible, smiling at the camera. The father stood to the side, his face turned slightly away. And behind the mother, that dark, person-shaped smudge, as if someone had been standing there but had somehow been erased from existence. A sudden crash from upstairs made them both jump. The sound of something heavy falling, followed by a long, dragging scrape across the floor. "Probably just the house settling," Marcus said, though his hand tightened around the flashlight. "These old places make all kinds of noises." "Right." Jamie didn't sound convinced. "Let's just get Mom's box and get out of here." They found the stairs and began to climb. The wood groaned under their weight, and Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Twice he spun around, convinced he'd seen movement in his peripheral vision, but the beam of his flashlight revealed only dust and shadows. The second-floor hallway stretched before them, doors on either side standing open like dark mouths. Marcus consulted the old house plans their mother had drawn from memory, her hands shaking as she sketched. "Third door on the right," he said. That was her bedroom. The room was small and painted in faded yellow, clearly a child's space. A narrow bed sat against one wall, still made with a cheerful floral comforter. Stuffed animals lined a shelf, their button eyes reflecting the flashlight beams like tiny stars. A poster of the Partridge family hung on one wall, its colors washed out by time. But it was the closet that drew Marcus's attention. Unlike the rest of the room, which was dusty but orderly, the closet door stood slightly ajar, and deep scratch marks gouged the wood around the handle, as if someone or something had desperately tried to claw their way out, or in. "That's comforting," Jamie muttered, hanging back as Marcus approached the closet. He pulled the door fully open, his flashlight revealing a cramped space packed with clothes that smelled of mothballs and decay. Shoeboxes lined the floor, and on the upper shelf he could see the edge of something red. Marcus reached up, his fingers closing around worn leather. The box was heavier than he expected, and as he pulled it down, something inside shifted and rattled. He set it on the floor, and both siblings stared at it in the beam of their flashlights. The box was old. The leather cracked and faded to a dull burgundy. No lock, no clasp, just a simple lid. Marcus glanced at Jamie, who nodded, and he carefully opened it. Inside, wrapped in yellow tissue paper, were photographs, dozens of them, maybe more. Marcus lifted the first one out and froze. The photo showed their mother at about 10 years old, standing in what looked like the backyard of this very house. She wasn't alone. A boy stood beside her, roughly her age, with dark hair and a bright smile. But this wasn't the brother from the family photos downstairs. This boy was different, and Marcus felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. "Check the back," Jamie said softly. Marcus flipped the photo over. In a child's careful handwriting, "Me and Tommy, July 1974, best friends forever." They went through more photos. Eleanor and Tommy at a park. Eleanor and Tommy building a snowman. Eleanor and Tommy carving pumpkins. In every image, Tommy's smile was bright and genuine, his eyes full of life. And in every image, Eleanor looked happy, in a way Marcus had never seen in any other childhood photo of his mother. "Who is Tommy?" Jamie asked. "And why isn't he in any of the family photos downstairs?" Marcus was about to answer when he noticed something at the bottom of the box, a newspaper clipping, the paper brittle with age. The headline made his blood run cold. "Local boy still missing after 2 weeks. Thomas Brennan, 10, vanished without trace." The article was dated August 1974. According to the report, Tommy Brennan had been playing with a friend in the neighborhood when he'd asked to use the bathroom. The friend's mother had sent him to the house next door, to the Holloway residence, where Tommy's friend Eleanor lived. Eleanor's mother had welcomed him in. Tommy Brennan was never seen again. "Oh my God," Jamie breathed. "Mom's family. They were the last ones to see him." Marcus kept reading, his hands trembling. The police had searched the Holloway house multiple times, but found no evidence of foul play. The family had been cooperative, though devastated by the accusation. Young Eleanor had been questioned gently by a child psychologist. She insisted Tommy had used the bathroom and left. She'd watched him walk down the front path and turn toward his own house 2 doors down. But Tommy never made it home. The investigation had consumed the small town of Ashford. Search parties combed the woods. The local lake was dragged. Bloodhounds were brought in. Nothing. Thomas Brennan had simply vanished, as if he'd never existed at all. "There's more," Marcus said, finding another clipping. This one was dated September 1974. A small piece from the local paper's gossip section. It mentioned that the Holloway family was facing increasing harassment from neighbors who believed they were hiding something about Tommy's disappearance. The article ended with a cryptic note. "Eleanor Holloway, 10, has been kept home from school after a disturbing incident involving the Brennan family." The final clipping was from October 16, 1974, the day after the house was sealed. It was brief, almost dismissive. "Holloway residents condemned. Family relocates after structural concerns." "Structural concerns," Jamie said flatly. "That's the official story." After all this, a sound from the hallway made them both freeze. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving across the old wooden floor. Marcus quickly killed his flashlight and motioned for Jamie to do the same. In the darkness, the footsteps grew louder, closer, accompanied by a soft, dragging sound, as if whoever was walking was pulling something heavy behind them. The footsteps stopped directly outside the bedroom door. Marcus held his breath, his heart hammering so hard, he was sure whoever was out there could hear it. Beside him, Jamie had pressed herself against the wall, her hand clamped over her mouth. "Eleanor." The voice was young, childlike, but with something wrong underneath, something hollow and cold. "Eleanor, is that you? I've been waiting so long." Marcus felt his skin crawl. He wanted to call out, to demand whoever it was to identify themselves, but the words died in his throat. Something about that voice, the way it echoed slightly, as if coming from somewhere far away and very close at the same time, filled him with a primal terror. "I know you're in there, Eleanor. I can smell you. You smell different, older, but it's still you. You came back for me, didn't you? You came back to let me out." The doorknob began to turn. Marcus grabbed Jamie's arm and pulled her toward the closet, the only hiding place available. They squeezed inside, pulling the door almost closed, leaving just enough space to peer through. Marcus's hand found the crowbar he'd set down earlier, his fingers closing around the cold metal. The bedroom door swung open slowly, and a figure shuffled into the room. In the dim light, filtering through the boarded windows, Marcus could make out a shape that might have been a boy, small and thin, dressed in clothes that looked decades out of date. But something was wrong with the proportions, the way it moved, joints bending in ways that made Marcus's stomach turn. "Eleanor." The figure moved toward the bed, its voice plaintive. "I've been in the walls for so long. It's cold in the walls, dark. I can hear everything but see nothing. Your family knew I was here. Your mother knew. But she locked the door, Eleanor. She locked the door and left me here. Jamie's fingernails dug into Marcus's arm. Through the crack in the closet door, they watched as the figure reached the bed and sat down. Its movements disturbingly puppet-like. In the pale light, Marcus could see its face, or what remained of it. The features were there, a nose, a mouth, eyes, but they seemed flat, unfinished, like a child's drawing come to horrible life. I used to call for help, the thing continued, its voice never changing tone. For days, I called and called. Your mother would walk right past, pretending she couldn't hear. Your father would turn up the television. Even you, Eleanor, my best friend, you stopped coming to the walls to talk to me. Do you remember? Those first few nights you would press your hands against the wallpaper and whisper that you were sorry, that you didn't mean for it to happen. But then you stopped. Everyone stopped. And I was alone in the dark. Marcus felt his mind racing, trying to understand. In the walls. How could someone be in the walls? But even as he thought it, he remembered the scratches on the closet door, remembered the way the house seemed to breathe around them, remembered that chemical smell that permeated everything. The figure stood abruptly, its head swiveling with an unnatural smoothness toward the closet. But you're not Eleanor, are you? You're too tall, too old. Eleanor was small, with pigtails and a pink dress. Who are you? Marcus burst from the closet, the crowbar raised, every instinct screaming at him to protect his sister. But the figure moved faster than should have been possible, its body contorting as it scrambled backward with that horrible dragging sound. "Stop!" Marcus shouted. "Who are you? What are you?" The thing that might have been Tommy Brennan tilted its head, and for just a moment in the pale light, Marcus saw something that made his blood freeze. The face shifted, features sliding like wet clay, until he was looking at a perfect copy of his own face staring back at him. "I'm whoever was left behind," it said in Marcus's voice. "I'm whoever you forget to save," Jamie screamed. The thing's face shifted again, becoming her face, her eyes, her mouth forming words. "I'm the guilt you bury. I'm the secret you seal behind walls." Marcus grabbed Jamie's hand and ran. They burst from the bedroom into the hallway, their flashlights forgotten in the bedroom behind them. In the darkness, Marcus could hear the thing following, its movements making sounds that weren't quite footsteps, more like the scrape of something dragging itself along the floor. "The stairs!" Jamie gasped, and they plunged down the steps, taking them two at a time. Marcus's foot caught on the third to last step, and he tumbled forward, his shoulder slamming into the wall at the bottom with a crack that lit up his nervous system with pain. Jamie hauled him to his feet. Behind them, at the top of the stairs, the thing stood, watching, its shape indistinct in the darkness. It didn't follow them down. Instead, it turned and walked back down the hallway, that dragging sound fading into the depths of the house. "The door!" Marcus managed, his shoulder screaming. "We need to get out." They staggered through the living room, past the frozen-in-time furniture and the smudged family photos, and burst through the front door into the rain. The cold water hit Marcus's face like a blessing, washing away the stale air of the house, the smell of decay and chemicals, and something else, something that had no name. They didn't stop running until they reached the truck. Marcus fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get them in the ignition. The engine roared to life, and he threw it in reverse, backing away from the house so fast the tires spun in the wet grass. As they pulled away, Jamie looked back at the house. Through the rain-streaked rear window, she could see a figure standing in the doorway they'd left open, small and still, watching them go. "Marcus," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "we forgot the box." Marcus gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. "I don't care. We're not going back." "But Mom survived whatever happened in that house. She got out. We got out. That's enough." They drove in silence for several miles, putting distance between themselves and 1247 Hickory Lane. Finally, when the house was far behind them and the streetlights of a more populated area began to appear, Jamie spoke again. "What was that thing? Was it really Tommy Brennan?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. His mind was replaying the creature's words, trying to understand. "I think," he started, then stopped, unsure how to articulate the horror of what he suspected. "I think something happened to Tommy in that house, something terrible, and I think Mom's family knew about it. But what? How do you hide a child's death? How do you seal someone in the walls? I don't know, but I think that's why the house was condemned. Not structural damage, not biohazard. The authorities found something, or suspected something, bad enough that they sealed the whole house, rather than deal with it. Maybe they couldn't prove what happened. Maybe Mom's family had connections. Or maybe, he trailed off, maybe what? Maybe what was in that house was something nobody wanted to believe in, something easier to seal away and forget than to confront. They reached the highway, and Marcus pointed the truck north, back toward Chicago. His shoulder throbbed, and every time he closed his eyes, he saw that thing's face shifting and changing, becoming him, becoming Jamie, becoming anyone and everyone. "We need to tell Mom we couldn't find the box," Jamie said finally. "We need to lie to her. She's dying, Marcus. She doesn't need to know we went there and failed." Marcus nodded, too tired to argue. They would return home, tell their mother the house was too dangerous to enter, that the seals couldn't be broken. It was kinder than the truth. The drive back to Chicago took 7 hours. They stopped only once, at a gas station where Marcus bought coffee and Jamie made use of the bathroom. The woman behind the counter was friendly, chatty even, asking where they'd been on such a miserable day. "Just visiting family," Marcus had said, and the simplicity of the lie was almost comforting. They reached their mother's hospice room just after 2 a.m. Eleanor Chen lay in her bed, the machines around her beeping softly, her breathing assisted by tubes and monitors. She opened her eyes as they entered, and Marcus saw his mother's face, old and tired, but still recognizably the girl from those photographs. "Did you find it?" Her voice was barely a whisper. Marcus moved to her bedside and took her hand. "Mom, the house was too dangerous. We couldn't get inside. I'm sorry." "Dick," something flickered across Eleanor's face. Relief, maybe, or resignation. "It's okay," she said. "I shouldn't have asked. I wanted to say goodbye, to put it all to rest." "Finally." "Put what to rest?" Jamie asked gently. Eleanor closed her eyes, and for a long moment Marcus thought she'd fallen asleep. Then, so quietly they almost couldn't hear, she began to speak. "Tommy Brennan was my best friend. We did everything together that summer of '74. He was the only kid in the neighborhood who didn't care that my family was Chinese, that we were different. He would come over almost every day. My mother loved him, always had cookies ready, always had a smile." She paused. Her breathing labored. On August 17th, Tommy came over to use the bathroom. His mother had sent him. My mom let him in. I was in the living room watching TV. Tommy went upstairs, and I heard the bathroom door close. Then I heard... She trailed off, tears forming in the corners of her closed eyes. "Mom, you don't have to tell us," Marcus said, but Eleanor shook her head. I heard him scream, just once. Cut off suddenly. I ran upstairs and my mother was already there in the hallway, standing very still. The bathroom door was open. Tommy was inside, collapsed on the floor. My mother told me to go downstairs. I did. I was scared, so I obeyed. Eleanor's hand tightened on Marcus's. My father came home. There was yelling, crying. They called someone, not the police, someone else. A man came, someone I'd never seen before. He and my father took Tommy's body, wrapped in a sheet, and I never saw where they put it. My parents told me Tommy had left, that he'd gone home, that I needed to forget what I'd seen. But how? Jamie's voice shook. How did he die? The house was old, built in 1912. The plumbing was original. That day, a pipe had burst in the wall behind the bathroom. The gas company had come out the week before for something else, had done work on the lines. Something had gone wrong. Very wrong. The bathroom filled with gas while Tommy was in there. Carbon monoxide, the colorless, odorless killer. He breathed it in, collapsed, and by the time my mother found him, he was gone. Marcus felt sick. Your parents hid his death? Why? Because they panicked. Because we weren't white. We weren't from here, and they thought they'd be blamed. Because my father worked in construction, and he knew exactly where to hide a body, where it would never be found. In the walls, between the studs, sealed behind new plaster and wallpaper. They told the police Tommy had left. They helped with the searches. And they lived in that house for 2 more months, knowing what was inside the walls. The scratches on the closet door, Jamie whispered. Eleanor nodded. I would hear sounds sometimes, at night, tapping, scratching. My parents said it was mice, but I knew. Even at 10 years old, I knew it was Tommy, somehow still there, trying to get out. Then one night in October, I woke up and saw him, standing at the foot of my bed, pale and wrong, his eyes black and empty. He didn't say anything, just stood there, staring at me. I screamed. My parents came running. She paused for breath, the machines around her beeping faster. That's when they brought in the man again. He came with others. They put things in the walls, did something, and the noises stopped. Tommy stopped appearing. But the man told my parents the house was contaminated. That's the word he used. Contaminated. He said we had to leave and never come back, that the house had to be sealed by the authorities. They arranged it all, made it look official. We moved to California the next week. And Tommy? Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. Still in the walls, still in that house, waiting, guessing, trapped. Eleanor opened her eyes, looking at her children with a gaze full of ancient sorrow. I've lived 50 years with that guilt, 50 years of nightmares. I wanted to go back, to let him out, to give him a proper burial, but I was too afraid. And now I'm dying, and it's too late. Marcus exchanged a glance with Jamie. They'd agreed not to tell their mother what they'd seen, but looking at her now, at the pain etched in every line of her face, he wondered if the truth might be kinder. Mom, he said carefully, we did get into the house. Eleanor's eyes widened, her breath catching. We saw him, Jamie added, or something that might have been him. And Mom, I don't think it's really Tommy anymore. I think it's something else. Something created by guilt and secrets and 50 years of being forgotten. We couldn't help him, Marcus continued. Whatever he's become, he's part of that house now, but we got out safely. We're here, and I think, he paused, choosing his words carefully, I think knowing someone finally acknowledged him might be enough. Someone finally saw him, admitted he existed. Maybe that's all he needed. Eleanor closed her eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I sent you there. I'm sorry I never told anyone the truth. I'm sorry to Tommy, to his family, to everyone. I've been a coward my whole life. You were a child, Jamie said fiercely. You were 10 years old. What happened wasn't your fault. But the silence was. The years of silence. That was my choice. They sat with their mother through the night, holding her hands, letting her cry out 50 years of guilt and grief. As dawn broke over Chicago, Eleanor's breathing began to slow, the morphine and exhaustion finally taking her into sleep. Marcus and Jamie left the hospice room and found a waiting area, collapsing into uncomfortable plastic chairs. They sat in silence, processing everything they'd learned, everything they'd seen. Do you think it's true? Jamie finally asked. About the carbon monoxide? The body in the walls? Or did Mom's guilt create its own reality? I don't know, Marcus admitted, but I believe her. I believe something terrible happened in that house, something that destroyed everyone involved. Whether the thing we saw was really Tommy's ghost or just a manifestation of that trauma. He shrugged. Does it matter? Jamie thought about this. I guess not. Either way, a child died, and everyone involved paid a price. Tommy most of all. They returned home later that morning, exhausted but unable to sleep. Marcus checked the news from Ashford County on his laptop, half expecting to see something about the house, about the broken seal, but there was nothing. The town seemed to be going about its business as if 12 and 47 Hickory Lane didn't exist. That night Marcus lay in bed, staring at the ceiling of his apartment. His shoulder still ached where he'd hit the wall, a deep purple bruise spreading across his skin. He thought about Tommy Brennan, about a 10-year-old boy who'd gone to use a bathroom and never came home. He thought about his mother, carrying that secret for 5 decades. He thought about the thing in the house, with its shifting face and hollow voice. He was drifting off to sleep when he heard it. A soft tapping sound, rhythmic and insistent, coming from inside his bedroom wall. Tap, tap, tap. Marcus sat bolt upright, his heart hammering. The sound continued, moving slowly along the wall, from the window toward the door. He grabbed his phone, turning on the flashlight, sweeping it across the wall. Nothing, just plain white paint and the shadows of his furniture. Tap, tap, tap. It's an old building, he told himself, his voice shaking. Pipes, heating system. Old buildings make noises, but the tapping seemed to follow his voice, pausing where he'd spoken, then continuing its journey around the room. Marcus watched in frozen horror as it moved behind his headboard, inches from where his head had been moments before. Then, as suddenly as it started, the tapping stopped. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat in his living room, all the lights on, his phone in his hand, ready to call. Who? The police. What would he tell them? That the ghost of a boy who died in 1974 had followed him home? Jamie called at 3 a.m. "Are you hearing it too?" she asked without preamble. "The tapping. It's in my walls. Marcus, it came home with us. Whatever was in that house, we brought it back." Over the next week, the manifestations grew worse. Marcus would wake to find his furniture rearranged, his clothes scattered across the floor in patterns that looked almost like words. Jamie reported similar experiences, plus shadows that moved independently of any light source, and cold spots that formed in the corners of her rooms. They tried everything. Marcus called in a priest who blessed the apartment, but admitted he wasn't sure what he was dealing with. Jamie contacted a paranormal investigator who took readings, found anomalies, and suggested they might have brought something through from the house. "But we didn't take anything," Marcus insisted. "We left everything there." "Sometimes," the investigator said gravely, "it's not about what you take, it's about what follows you. You opened a sealed door. You acknowledged something that had been forgotten. You gave it attention, recognition, and that can be enough." On the 8th day after their visit to Hickory Lane, Marcus got the call from the hospice. His mother had passed away peacefully in her sleep. He and Jamie went to her room to collect her belongings. The nurse on duty handed them a bag containing Eleanor's wallet, her glasses, and a small notebook. "She was writing in this a lot toward the end," the nurse said. "She seemed very focused on it, like she needed to get something down." Marcus opened the notebook. The pages were filled with his mother's shaky handwriting, growing worse as the entries progressed. Most of it was fragmented, pieces of memories, apologies to Tommy Brennan, expressions of guilt. But the last page, written apparently just hours before she died, was different. "My children went to the house. They saw what I left behind. I thought I wanted them to bring back my guilt, to make it real, to force me to confess, but I was wrong. Some things should stay buried. Some doors should stay sealed. If you're reading this, Marcus and Jamie, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for sending you there. I'm sorry for what I've brought into your lives. There's only one way to stop it. You have to go back. You have to finish what I started." Marcus showed the notebook to Jamie. They sat in their mother's empty hospice room, reading and rereading that final entry, trying to understand what Eleanor meant. "Finish what she started," Jamie said. "What did she start?" Marcus thought back to that night in the house, to the thing that had worn his face and spoken in his voice. "She started the process of acknowledgement. She sent us there to see Tommy, to know what happened. But we ran. We left him there, still sealed in that house. Maybe that's what he's angry about. Maybe he followed us because we saw him, acknowledged his existence, but then abandoned him just like everyone else did. So what are we supposed to do? Go back and... what? Hold a séance? Tear down the walls? I don't know," Marcus admitted. "But Mom said there's only one way to stop it, and whatever she meant, I don't think we have a choice. Not if we want to sleep in our own homes again." The decision made, they prepared for a second trip to Ashford. This time, they came armed with more than flashlights and a crowbar. Marcus brought a sledgehammer, work gloves, and a respirator mask. Jamie packed a digital recorder, a camera, and after some hesitation, a handgun she'd inherited from their father. "I know it probably won't do anything," she said, loading it, "but I'll feel better having it." They drove through the night, arriving at 1247 Hickory Lane just as the sun was rising. The house looked different in the daylight, less menacing but somehow sadder, a forgotten relic, slowly collapsing under the weight of its secrets. The front door still hung open from their hasty exit. They stepped inside, and Marcus immediately noticed a change. The house felt different, more present somehow, as if it had been sleeping before and was now awake and waiting. "Tommy?" Marcus called out, his voice echoing through the empty rooms. "Tommy Brennan? We came back. We want to help." Silence. Then, from somewhere deep in the house, that dragging sound, slow and deliberate, moving toward them. The thing that had been Tommy Brennan emerged from